Hi, I'm Justin Koch, the writer of SWAT. We're doing a Zoop campaign, and I'm on Threads as Justin Koch 6161. And you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Hi, I'm Rachel Distler. I'm the artist of the Nightcrawlers, of the Cat Skin, the Rose, and now SWAT. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Red Tie Bear, and you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by two very talented individuals. One of them has already been on the show twice. This will be her third time on Two Geeks Talking, so she's part of the Three Timers Club. So congratulations on that. And we are joined by creator writer Justin Koch and artist Rachel Distler for SWAT Eldritch Blues. How are you both doing today?
I'm hanging in there. I'm feeling pretty good right now. How's everyone else feeling?
I've had a crazy week, mostly fine.
And now you get to talk about SWAT Eldritch Blue. For those that don't know anything about yourselves as creative people, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
Well, my name's Justin Koch. I've been writing basically my whole life. I segued into comics a couple of years ago, and it just fit, right, in a way that novels never did. So I've just been writing comics ever since. SWAT is it's my baby. If I told you how much I actually believed in it, you'd probably think I was a lunatic. It's definitely the greatest thing I've ever written. I can say that without a doubt.
I'm the artist, so clearly I'm bringing the art. Honestly, when I think about what Justin has said, is definitely unlike any script I have ever received. It's very clever. It's very, very, very witty. It's to the point where, when you have something that's really dense, you just kind of have to liken it to something else. I think up on the Zoop page, we have it likened with, there's obviously Harry Potter parody, but it's that, and I think we liken it to The Wire. How many layers can you convey to somebody really, really quickly? I think a lot of people are more used to me drawing kind of lighter scripts. Not to say that there isn't a lightness, but I'm glad to be able to also kind of convert my style just a little bit more towards something that's both open. I think my art has been described as before, but a little grittier.
Let's talk about, of course, SWAT Eldritch Blues. Can you tell me, what is it all about?
It's about a team of people, and they go on this adventure that just is sort of reality starts bending around them, and it just gets weirder and weirder as it goes, in ways that I think the audience will both be excited and confused for most of it, and that's what I'm going for. So basically, a descent into hell is pretty much what it is. Did intentionally model it off of Dante's Inferno to some degree. That sounds incredibly pretentious, but basically it just gets really weirder and weirder and weirder until it resolves in the end.
Just in terms of reading the script, and thanks so much for sending me that and seeing, of course, the first 6 pages. I know Rachel's artwork from past interviews, and I love the style that she went with. I love the fact that you have such gritty characters and you have such an amazing repertoire between these characters and the conversations and dialogue that I didn't get to see in the terms of the pages themselves, but I read in the script. I can't wait to see this finished. I'm really excited about it. It takes a lot for me to get excited about comics, but looking at this and what we do in the shadows kind of came to mind, and The Wire came to mind. You're hitting on things that I love in pop culture, and you did a great job with this.
Thank you very much. Writing it felt like an eruption, right? It was just coming out. All this stuff, all this anger and frustration over the last 8 years, COVID, Trump, everything, right, is just flowing out. It's easy to write comedy about assholes, right? Like Always Sunny. I love Always Sunny, but it's easy to write comedy with jerks because they're funny, right? But SWAT, I mean, I'm not saying that some of the team can't be jerks at times, but it is a story about good people who actually care about each other, but it's also funny. And I thought that was something that we needed to see. I'm kind of tired of cynicism and everyone sucks. And it was time for a story that showed that people can be good to each other, I guess. Yeah, so there's that. There's so many different things, man. I mean, the Venture Brothers was a huge influence as well. I love the Venture Brothers. It's probably a bigger influence than Harry Potter, honestly. I just kind of started with that because it's millennial symbolism, I guess, is them.
Yeah, it's a great latching on point for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the millennial influences there. Venture Brothers. A lot of people that I know got me onto Venture Brothers, and I was just like, where has this been all my life? In reading your script, now that you mentioned Venture Brothers, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's completely there. I see it.
It's kind of funny. Last night, it just happened very organically. My wife comes home, and for whatever reason, she's like watching a video with like Klaus Nomi and David Bowie. And of course, there is that in the Venture Brothers. And I think about that scene. We were like watching those clips then right afterwards about like just how funny and smart and irreverent it is to have like David Bowie be this like antagonist, and that Klaus Nomi has, his shriek is like this attack and kind of, there are very, very much like moments in SWAT just like that, just pulling from like real life and playing on these like really bizarre facets of their character. It's very clear to see to me now. Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of Venture Brothers DNA in the story.
Started watching the Venture Brothers, I think at season 2, ended last 6 months ago or something. And I mean, I think that has a big impact on what its popularity is. It can rent a car, right? Like it just a long time to wrap it up. I have enormous amount of respect for that show. Yeah, absolutely. I've written 36 issues, so I have all the stuff that I'm thinking of that nobody else has even seen. There's a lot of horror to it, references to internet memes, but yeah, it's all over the place. Just a visit to everything I've been watching for 20 years, basically. The reason I picked her as the artist is because it has the right level of silliness, but I didn't want to go super dark, gritty with it. It needed to have a comic look to it. It is ultimately, more about the comedy than anything else.
That's not a bad thing. Because of the short attention span of today's society, the fact that you're bringing pop culture from 20 years ago into your writing and into your work, making it relevant, just wonderful to see. And who the cast of the characters are. And then Rachel, I wanted to ask her about why she styled the characters as she did.
There's Larry Slaughter. He is a hard-bitten St. Louis detective back in the 90s. Basically, he survives a school shooting with Mimi, his partner, back when they were in high school, and he killed the Voldemort, if you will, of the legally distinct Voldemort, basically, and it really has messed up his entire life. It gets into spoiler territory to talk about it too much, so I'll just leave it there. There's Mimi, who is a fellow survivor. They have an on and off relationship. Even when they're not dating, they care deeply about each other. There's Hermes, who is about 3,000 years old, and he is senile, but he won't retire. He just won't. There's Mabelina, who, I guess I'll spoil this. She thinks she's a fake psychic, but she's actually a real psychic in that she is always attracted to the bad decision. So basically, you just let her go, what do you want to do? And then you do the opposite. That's Mabelina's character. And then there's Tiny Tim, who is about this tall. He has a magic murder bag, which he can use to do various things that really got out of control. Anyway. Yeah, so that's basically it. There's Lisa, kind of the house mom. She's the sane one. She's kind of in the unit as punishment for testifying against other cops in a brutality case. So she's kind of there as the normie that they have to get used to this insane world of just utter insanity.
So then, Rachel, when you got the script, you got these characters. What was some of your influences in terms of what you wanted to bring with your art style?
When I got the script, I was kind of coming off of the heels of like the Nightcrawlers, which is like a very, very different demographic. One of those things where I set out with comic, there are a lot of things that I am interested in, a lot of genres I'm interested in. Doing middle grade books is like a lot of fun and very creatively fulfilling. But I would also like to do, a lot of different things just because I read a lot of different things. I mostly read like a bunch of Western indie graphic novels and manga with like some smatterings of like certain Cape comic books in there. It's always very enjoyable to me. So I hadn't really dabbled too much, read like your standard gritty dark fare. You've got like Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and your foundational level. Really enjoyed like Batwoman and a few things like that. But Justin enjoyed, like, he was very vocal about how much he enjoyed the base level at which it's just sort of drawing. So when it came to choosing a style for SWAT, it was really kind of like with Nightcrawlers, I'm actually kind of pushing it a little bit more out of my range. I like drawing, like animals and like cute things, a lot of other stuff, but I also like drawing, you know, adults in action poses, and like I said, like a smattering of all kinds of stuff. So it was really kind of like retooling other people's maybe perception of like my wheelhouses. Like I think there's kind of a little bit of everything in there. Really kind of mostly adjusting like the line art and like the line quality with the night crawlers. Like a lot of scenes happen at night, but even just like the way like I intended to cover like how you shadow things and like how much spot black to use and like what the framing is. It was more of a directorial change than it was like a stylistic change. Changing the framing of like the way that I show things, as well as like a little bit of style. But I didn't really have to like fundamentally alter a lot of what I enjoy doing.
Were you talking more along the lines of like perspective shifting? Or I know you're thinking in a 3D space. To convey that into a 2D space can be kind of tricky and challenging.
Fortunately, there is like some cross, just thanks to the night crawlers being a like middle reader horror. So like I can also make that a little bit more mature. Just like even considering like when Justin had like, you know, the part about like the St. Louis eye line, I was like, oh, how would they do this in like NCIS? Like instead of like thinking how would DreamWorks, you know, frame, you know, for say like the night crawlers, just like what would they do on CSI? What would they do on like Law and Order? That kind of thing. And then just trying to convey it like that. And like I said, I could be a little heavier with some of the rendering in like areas because I wasn't expecting so much like bright color to have to like sit in that spot. Like it could be a little grimier. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Justin, when you gave your script to Rachel, what was the first piece of artwork that you got back that just was way better than what you had on the page?
We've only gotten 6 pages done so far, so I have a very high opinion of my page. I think her style is just absolutely perfect for it, and there are a lot of jokes that I am looking forward to seeing how she does them. Part of what I love about comics is you can show so much with the drawing that you don't have to explain with, you know, expositional boring crap. There is a lot of visual jokes and things like that. From what's completed, the part where he throws the pencil because Larry wished he had butt cancer is probably the one panel I would say was special, the most special. But it's all great. Well, that's the idea. So and Girk, that is actually a human last name. I checked, but he has perfectly valid reasons for hating Larry that you come into later. Like Larry kind of went out of his way to initiate this dispute, but it's also a classic 80s, you know, cop show scene where the sergeant's screaming at you and all that kind of stuff. So that was definitely in there in the mix as well. I watch a lot of Best of the Worst. I don't know if you know what that show is, but they make fun of like 80s B movies and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of 80s and 90s B movie cliches running around up in here that come out sometimes.
So is it similar to Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Instead of making you watch the whole movie, because the problem with Mystery Science Theater 3000 is that most of those movies are just terrible.
Yeah.
And they're so long. They go through, they pick the highlights, they make jokes, you know, it's great. I mean, it actually is about the only thing I watch on YouTube anymore. It's in that vicinity, but there is definitely a lot of 80s B movie cop, you know, Action USA type stuff in there.
So then, Rachel, when you got the script, what was one page that you can talk about that you just had to draw right away?
Ooh, I don't know if I could narrow it necessarily to one page. And I don't know exactly, because like you do head into like, again, very spoilery territory. I guess he's on the cover, so like I could talk about a little bit. Is it okay to talk about Praise God?
Yeah, go for it.
Without entering heavy spoiler territory, is that if you look at the cover, you'll see somebody that's kind of Slender Man-y, like in the shadows. How things work out for him isn't great. He's a wonderful character, but there is something about the particular scene with his childhood and what happens to him, his sibling, and just I think it perfectly balances, you know, what Justin was saying earlier. Seeing on the script, like there is a very real kind of level of drama and at times brutality, but it's never treated with nihilism. It doesn't succumb to like a level of cynicism. Like seeing that work out on the page was like a moment where I was like, I cannot wait to get to this point, because I think it's going to be I think it's going to challenge me as an artist, but I think it's also going to be, I think, a moment where people look at this page, they're going to read it, and they're going to realize exactly like how this is firing on so many levels.
Is there a particular monster you're excited to see the team face off against?
It gets weird. So yeah, I mean, there's some very interesting things. I'm gonna be very interested in seeing how Rachel draws. I mean, one character, I'll go ahead, spoilers or whatever. He's Count von Zahlen. He's a goblin accountant / pirate who loves to do audits, where he shows up and steals all your stuff and kills you. And so he's fun. And then he has a couple of different forms, so that'll be interesting. The big bad of the first round is a pretty interesting character in his own right. I don't know that he gets as much development as Count von Zahlen, but he's part of a pretty elaborate plan that actually exists in the real world to trigger the apocalypse. There's some amount of that going on as well, where he's a vampire who's been around for God knows how long, and he's a survivor. He's a scrapper. He's pretty slick, I think, as well. So there's a lot of villains in there. There's various, it's all over the place. It gets real nuts. There's 36 issues is what it is. Every 6 issues, it resets. It doesn't reset, but it moves into a new arc. So there's 6 arcs. It all flows together. There are a lot of very interesting characters, I think, in the whole thing.
Rachel, it sounds like you have your work cut out for you here.
Oh yeah, no. Like I'm dealing with a smorgasbord, really. Like I don't think there's going to be a dull moment where I'm just like I'm drawing too much of like one thing, because it's going to bounce around plenty enough. Like you would think like, oh, I'm going to be doing maybe a lot of like cop office interior. Not really. No, it's going to get really bananas. Like I said, I think this is going to be very fun and challenging artistically in ways I'm very excited about.
You have a Zoop campaign. Zoop is a little different from Kickstarter in the respect that it actually focuses on comics specifically, which I think is great to see here. But campaigns of crowdfunding proportions are usually like a second job. What are you expecting from this campaign, and how are you trying to promote it?
Having a hard time with that one. I mean, this is the most effective thing we've done so far. It is hard. It's hard to get people interested in it. It's one of a million people begging for money, basically, right? So this is my first crowdfunding thing, so I'm learning as I go. What I want out of it is basically to fund. It's out with publishers, and I think somebody's going to pick it up. The idea is basically to fund at least the first arc, ultimately, not with this one campaign. It's just issue 1, but kind of use that to help subsidize the production of the first arc, at least, ultimately.
When it comes to the campaign as well, it's always great to see the different levels that you have for Zoop. What can we expect?
Yeah, we definitely have digital copies, physical copies. We're going to do, or Rachel's going to do sketches where it could be basically whatever the person requests. I think there's a retail pack. We don't have any variant covers at this point. I just don't know how much value that's going to bring to a completely new thing. But it's probably a pretty simple, here's a comic, give me $10. Well, I did the math. 5,000 is the goal. I mean, because basically between the art and the lettering and the printing and the postage, that's what it costs. So that would be ideal. But Zoop has a pretty good success rate, I think. So hopefully that'll happen.
And so the campaign goes from obviously now to what's the end date?
There isn't an end date right now. We're still in the phase where we're kind of ramping that up. Hopefully this podcast will help kind of get enough interest going that they bump us to the front of the line, so to speak. At this point, we're just trying to get people to sign up to get notified, honestly.
I think the trailer itself that you put together is a great starting point. I think that's a good starting point.
A few months ago, the St. Louis Budget Committee decided to cut spending. They already cut the library and the schools and band and shop and English, public transportation, healthcare, housing, sewage, and roads. Did I miss anything? Anyway, the leaders of SWAT had a choice: fire someone or come up with an elaborate plan to make themselves indispensable, even though they hate it here. The plan, well, It goes about as badly as it possibly could. March 16th, 2022. In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous. In New York City, the dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Victims Unit. These are not their stories. These are not their stories at all. This is the story about the cops other cops don't know even exist. They aren't the guys who deal with rapists and pedophiles. They deal with the stuff that would give those special victim knobs the screaming purple Henrys. This is the Secret Wizard Assault Team.
I think as you get more pages, or at least more character designs, you could pump that into your trailer and kind of filter it that way and get some interest in that respect. Even if there's no names attached to them, you can have some really cool effects going.
We have some sketches, yeah. I definitely have some character sketches somewhere on my computer I can send you for sure.
Now, I don't know if this is spoiler territory or not. Can you elaborate on the agreement between monsters and wizards, which is called the Grand Bargain, which I think is an interesting title?
A long time ago, there was kind of a giant war. Sort of the agreement at the end is essentially that it's sort of like a hunting thing, right? The monsters get 500 tags in the St. Louis City area, and they use them the way that you would to shoot a deer, basically. But anything beyond that, like the slightest violation of the rules, you get shot. If the cops catch you, they will terminate the monster, basically. So it's kind of this weird creaky thing where people agree with it, but also they're cheating constantly. It's kind of like America, right? We have rules, but so many people just seem to not give a crap anymore. So basically the monsters have agreed to limit themselves to a certain body count every year, and SWAT are the people that make them actually do that.
So then how hard is Larry Slaughter's job in regards to trying to keep the peace?
He's kind of living at a level of stress and chaos and violence that I think most people wouldn't be able to handle. His day-to-day life is probably most people's worst day, you know what I mean, or the weirdest thing that ever happened to him. So that's just Monday for him. There's one scene, I don't even remember what issue this is anymore, but I kind of start with 2-page bumpers where I do a little foreshadowing or just a joke, mostly because all the stories were coming in at 20 pages, so I needed to come up with a couple more. They're driving up to Burger King to buy lunch, and there's a sign, because this is based off an actual thing I saw online, where there's somebody posted a sign to their Burger King where they're like, no one wants to work because demons have infested the Burger King, basically. And normally you just think that's a crazy person, but they have to investigate it, right? So then they argue about going to Taco Bell first because they're hungry, that kind of thing. That's their life, is that this is just a mildly annoying, incident for them. And then they burn Burger King down. But, whatever.
I hope it wasn't on Whopper Wednesday. I mean, geez, that's still a deal these days. If Larry Slaughter had a dating profile bio, what would it say?
Oof. Geez, I don't know. He'd probably, I guess there'd be some sort of wizard dating app. So he's kind of semi-famous in this world. Like, he's more of a, who was that guy that was married Britney Spears for like 6 months back in 2000? It's a guy that you've heard of, but it's been a long time and you're not sure if it was good or not, that kind of thing. I don't think he'd date, honestly. That's a good question. I really just don't have a good answer for it, but
I think the app would be called Broomstick or something like that.
I need to get that in there. That's pretty good.
Oh, thanks. Please use it. How about you, Rachel? Any other characters you think would have a dating profile?
Oh my. Everyone have like the messiest dating profile. Like Lisa would have the most normal dating profile, but I feel like maybe she would like build one, but then quickly forget it even exists because she's way too busy just like trying to manage. Like she's the only one really doing the work, I guess, in the sense the right way. She's too busy trying to keep things from catching on fire. Hermes, I don't know how you would build. He's 3,000 years old. I'm not sure if he knows what a dating app is. Maybe Tiny Tim. He would actually probably have something pretty spicy now that I think about it. Very salacious, maybe.
I think Maybellina's dating profile would be the most interesting one, but it would just be awful. It was every bad decision you could make about dating.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I hadn't even like thought about that.
It'd be like the kind of thing that they make memes out of.
Be nothing but like going for red flags.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
If you have more than 5 red flags in your life, please hit me up.
Exactly.
Like one of the things they'll do with her is they'll put her in a room with a bunch of suspects, and whoever gets the phone number is the murderer. You know, that's kind of how they roll. So
You have a positive vibe about you, which really means a negative vibe, something like that.
well, she's based off of this person that I know who is just there's just some people you run into where they have a preternatural ability to fuck up. I had this one client once, I'm a lawyer. She bought a bunch of allergy pills to make meth with, right? But she's talking to the FBI and she just says the exact wrong thing at all times, right? Like just the one thing you shouldn't have said, to the point where I'm like, you must know you shouldn't say that. Like you were honing in on the worst option every time. Shut up. Just shut up. She's kind of making fun of a lot of people where it's just like comical amounts of fuck uppery. I don't know.
You know, imagine the squad's on a stakeout. What kind of bickering or banter might ensue while they wait for the suspect?
It depends on the pairing. Maybellina and Tiny Tim kind of do that a few times, and it gets really sexual and gross. Not in their banging way. It's just that Maybelline is gross. Larry and Mimi will get into kind of extended philosophical discussions about what they're doing. Is the grand bargain a good idea or not? Shouldn't we just kill all the vampires or whatever? There's a lot of mix and match. It's a pretty large posse. So there's always, interactions between the various people can be very different.
I know you mentioned the pop culture references because of the 80s and everything like that earlier, but can you name 3 pop culture references that fans can expect to find hidden in the comic?
There's an Aqua Teen reference, Aqua Teen Hunger Force reference in there. I'll let people figure that one out. It's not exactly a huge mystery. I mean, there's a lot of references, just there's a lot of Lovecraft in there. I mean, there's quite a bit of that. Obviously, the Venture Brothers are a huge influence, but I don't think there is that. Actually, yes, there is a Venture Brothers thing in there as well. But it's just sort of what you get when a guy with some sort of weird attention deficit hyperactivity disorder watches an assload of Adult Swim.
Larry's immortal in this world of wizards, right?
It's a little vague at this point. He can definitely get shot in the face and die. That's at 100%. I think wizards tend to age a bit slower, or at least Hermes has. I haven't fully decided on that one yet. They're drawn much younger than I was picturing because I'm picturing someone my age, but for commercial and artistic reasons, I think we decided to so they're doing great. They're 25 to 30 and probably will be the entire time.
What is the best part about being Larry in the world of wizards and monsters?
I think for Larry, he wants to be the guy that you can call at 5 a.m. and bail you out of jail. Or if you're on his team, he will take a bullet for you. That's kind of the thing. I think he finds basically the only reason he hasn't just quit or shot himself is essentially that he has all these people that he needs to protect. And it's mostly the people on his team. I mean, there's a general desire to protect, but it's coming through for the people close to him that I think would be what he's getting out of it. He's also a weird, hyper-violent person, but he has a good heart, but he has a lot of PTSD.
You do what you can with the life you're given, obviously, and luckily in a comic, you can change the life however you need to.
Yeah. So.
Who would win in a fight? Merlin, Gandalf, Doctor Strange, Willow Rosenberg, Sabrina Spellman, Harry Potter, or Larry Slaughter?
Who shoots first?
You shoot for. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking very hard about this.
No, I mean literally who shoots first, because that's one of Larry's motto is shoot first, die last. Right? He can do a lot of damage, and he is a big believer in shooting first. So I think he'd have a pretty good shot at all of them.
So Larry wins by default.
I believe in Larry. I don't know. Merlin, what does Merlin even do? I don't know. It's been a long time since I read King Arthur and stuff, but
he's more of an illusionist than, he can still do like elementals, but I think he was more of an illusionist than anything.
One of the things I found, and this is pedantic, I'm not trying to say this is a real problem, but in Harry Potter, when they're just waving the sticks and shooting little blasts of light at each other, it's kind of lame. We do not do that in SWAT. It is way, more serious stuff than that. The magic's a lot different. They all have cell phones, for instance. Like, they merge technology and magic. There's not, like, if you sent, actually, well, no, that isn't in the series, but there is a point in the sequel. I've kind of tried to write the sequel, for instance, where someone sends an owl and they're all just like, what the fuck? And the owl says, your fax machine is broken. And that's kind of, you know what I mean? Kind of making fun of things on that level. But there's also consequences to it. Like, what Larry is doing is changing reality. Like, he's willing reality to be different. In this world, if you do that too much, reality kind of snaps back at you. The problem with writing about magic is you end up in a point where you're like, why didn't they use the time turner to or fly an eagle to, right? So there's got to be limits to it, or you end up just creating giant plot holes. There's a lot of cost to magic, but it's also it can be very deadly at the same time.
First of all, isn't it actual like police protocol as well to shoot first? I think they have found that like it's less about how accurate you are, but how fast you are. I think that is a pretty good argument for Larry in this situation. Of course, I love Gandalf, but he kind of lives in a world with the magic. It's a little bit more subtle. And then in Harry Potter, like, there are so many moments in that book where it's just like they don't know what a phone is at all. And I'm like, well, these guys have phones and guns and magic. That kind of stacks the deck a little bit. It's just like I love Sabrina, but I don't think she's quite cut out for this world. It's a little bit intense. I mean, I guess they had like the Netflix show where it's a little, darker, but I never actually got to watch it. I think Larry could clutch it. You have to read like everything he has to go up against. He's not a pushover at all. So, like, maybe it is a little self-indulgent to say, but I think he can swing this. I think he's got it.
It'd definitely be a contest.
We talked about earlier in the green room about maybe making this possibility of a short film or a pilot. Say you get to that next step where you actually get that. If you could cast any actors or actresses to play the main characters, who would you choose?
Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson. I mean, it's the obvious. You got to have to ask them first. I don't know. Maybe they have to come in as a duo, but it's a parody. And I kind of feel like the more in your face you are about it, the better, honestly. Like, I am not fucking around. This is a parody. I think Daniel Radcliffe might go for it, honestly. But that would be awesome. I mean, that would be perfect. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas about the TV show. I mean, like I said before, I have the theme song picked out and everything. But this is all where I get into the delusional, insane, thing where I don't want to talk about how much I believe in this because you sound like a pretentious asshole, right? But it'd be an awesome show, I think. I mean, it would.
I always get a little bit of Larry when, like the meme image of Daniel Radcliffe taken from that movie where he's in the bathrobe with like the gun. And he has taken like a lot of post, Harry Potter career playing like little weirdos. It's like, I think it would be on the nose, but also extremely perfect.
Oh, that's Guns Akimbo. I thought he was just doing that in the street.
Right, yeah.
It's so cool that's in a movie.
Surprisingly, that was actually a good film. And then Horns as well was a good film that he did too, which was really well done. Stephen King's son wrote that one.
His Weird Al movie was pretty funny too.
I was thinking on the flip side, it'd be really funny to have Robert Pattinson play it just because he was Cedric Diggory. Just like, let's get the other guy. And he also plays a lot of like weird dudes too. So it was like,
That's the Twilight guy, right?
Yeah, it's the Twilight guy. But he also was in The Lighthouse, and he was like Batman. He picks a lot of like really interesting roles at times. It's just like it's his arc after Twilight is also super fascinating.
Especially when you have good writing and deeper scripts than superficial stuff, like glittery vampires.
I really missed the beat. I didn't make fun of Twilight once. It didn't cross my mind.
You can slide it in.
I've watched them. I think they're entertaining. It's like a comfort film. Don't think too much about it. I never wanted to read the books. I had a roommate who was like, we're going to watch the Twilight films. I was like very Twilight agnostic. I am not the demographic for this, but this is like entertaining. How do you even describe? It's just like a level of, it's over the top in a very teenage way. You could pop that on a rainy night and I'd be there. Just like let the spectacle happen. Like, it's not a thinker, but that's the beauty of it.
Imagine Larry is giving a pep talk to the squad. What would it sound like?
There's a lot of dark humor. So basically, the way Larry deals with being afraid is to make dark jokes. So the more serious the situation, the more absurd the dark humor would be. And basically, like, the more kind of fatalistic or macabre he would get. EMTs and cops are known for having really dark, morbid senses of humor. And I think that's why, is because the more fucked up the situation is, the more you got to make a joke about it, right? So there would be some heart to it, but it would also be like, pretty fucked up.
Everyone usually asks, what's the wisest piece of advice or what's the most bullshit piece of advice you've ever received? But what is the second wisest piece of advice that you've received that has stuck with you in your career?
This isn't great advice, but it does seem to be true. Lawyer wise, it's the people who go to bat for you that will fuck you the hardest, or that you go to bat for that will screw you the hardest. And that's pretty often true, right? Lawyering is kind of like 98% boring, 2% surreal nightmare. It gets weird sometimes. It gets real weird. And I think that's part of what's in SWAT too, a lot, is that you deal with some people that are just, that's probably a source of a lot of it. I mean, in a weird way, SWAT's kind of, I've said this before, is true, but it's not. This is the closest I'm going to get to an autobiography. I mean, obviously not, but there's a lot of elements of like my personal life or, weird retellings of things that happened, Writing wise, I guess I suppose that what I would say is I feel like irrelevance and vagueness are kind of the two. It's like the heart disease and cancer of bad writing. And so if you get rid of those two things, you're going to at least be okay. You're at least going to be adequate. You might not be a genius, but you won't suck, right? If you can get rid of vagueness and irrelevance and just everything has a purpose. The worst piece of advice I think I've ever gotten as a writer, there's a meme that floats around the internet. There's a story with a blue curtain, and the English professor says the blue curtain symbolizes depression or whatever. And then the punchline is sometimes the curtain's just blue. Anybody who posts that, I instantly write off as a crap writer because that misses the point entirely. There is no curtain. The question is, why are you telling the audience there's a curtain? And if your answer is, then that sucks and delete it, and that helped a lot.
I think it comes back to just being able to trim the fat of your own script, because sometimes you get so invested into your own stories that you just need to take a step back and kind of reevaluate, is what I'm writing or is what my characters are interacting with, or am I leaving too many Chekhov's guns type situations around there? How can I become a better writer as a whole?
If you can do three things with everything you're doing, it's going to be good, right? If you're accomplishing 2 or 3 different things with every word you write, it's going to be slick. So yeah, I mean, keeping it tight, keeping it on point. For me, whenever my characters end up going shopping, I'm like, I'm going to go back 2,000 words and figure out what I did wrong, because this is bullshit. It is boring, so you got to keep it tight, especially in comics. But that's kind of what I love about comics. It's like the structure of it makes you keep your shit together. You can't spend 100 pages on crap because that's 5 issues. That costs a lot of money to get drawn. You got to make it, you got to keep it going. A big part of why I love comics, it's just so fun, right? It's so imaginatively free. You can do whatever you want. People will roll with it. You can have aliens that are robots with the heads of cathode ray TVs. No one questions it. Go have fun. I mean, and that's a big part of why, I mean, I really love writing comics. It's just, I felt like I finally found my home. I wrote a lot of novels, and a couple of them got published in the shittiest way possible that involves me getting money. And I mean, well below slave labor wages, but I still got paid something. But it was always for audiences that I felt like I was educating them, and that's not the right way to go. You need to like your audience, or they're gonna tell. They know, right? The guys reading zombie fan fiction online, they're not reading, Joyce, not because they don't know who he is, it's because they don't give a shit, right? You got to respect your audience. And I think with comics, I'm there, right? Where I'm excited about, who's going to read it and how they're going to react.
And it also helps, Rachel, that you've been doing comics for a while now. I'm sure you can give your input into the respects for paneling and pacing and things like that from a drawing perspective.
My strategy with that is I'm more concerned with the rhythm of the dialogue and then giving her enough space to do what she's going to do. I can't draw stick figures, so I don't really want to get too heavy into the art style. I don't dictate too much what they're doing. I'm trying to just give them a creative prompt almost and be like, this is the emotions going on. Do what you want to do. And it's been great so far. I like the, I mean, just everything about comics is just cool. I think I even like the publishing industry better. I mean, I hated yeah, you're looking at me like I'm what, but if you've been hanging around at the bottom end of prose publishing, this is awesome. It seems more lively. Like people, they just treat you like shit over in prose, right? They're like, we're going to get back to you in 6 months. And if not, don't ask. Also, no simultaneous submissions because you're immortal and you can sit around for 6 months waiting for us to almost certainly say no. I mean, the amount of abuse they, because they know for everybody out there, there's 10,000 people behind you that will take your spot. I think honestly, just having paid an artist kind of gets you off the slush pile, right? A little bit more than with pros.
I think the collaboration between you both is a great thing to see and have, because it's good to have someone with experience in the industry that you're finding passion for as well.
It's been great working with her. I mean, I think she, I really love her art. I'm really glad that we ended up working together.
The fact that you have 36 issues, the fact that you have you have multiple arcs going, the fact that you're invested in your characters and that you love what you're doing, I think I can really hear it in your voice. I can see it in your eyes. I can really see what exactly you're trying for. And not many people can say that they jump into comics and that they like it. Some people just do it for a job. Some people want to break from, say, other industries.
Writing is the worst way to make money. Just go for insurance or some shit. I mean, if you're writing for the money, you better be James Patterson, and that's about it. Anyway, no, I really do. This is my masterpiece. It's a big deal for me. It's a really, like, I finally found my voice that other people could finally, get, right? Whereas before it was just, I would occasionally get great reactions from whatever I was writing, but mostly it was but with comics, it just comes out and people get it, and it's amazing.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
My God. Basically, at one point, there was a case in which this was kind of my first I was right out of law school, case where this woman, she was a bigamist, okay? And she got divorced from my client, who then died of cancer after they found out she was a bigamist. And so she came back trying to claim she's a surviving spouse because she went and got a retroactive divorce from the first guy in California. So therefore she's married to the second guy. It was a whole deal. It's one of those things where it's so stupid that people took it seriously. I kind of feel like that's the Trump presidency. Like, it's so stupid that you just can't believe it's actually as stupid as it looks. And it gets so much further because of how dumb it is. But anyway, so I'm like freaking out about it and whatever. But there's this lawyer who mentored me through that, right? And she is a intellectual property lawyer. She represented Charles Schultz, Reba McEntire, other stuff like that. So she's like been around the block, and she just put me through the shredder on everything I wrote for that case. And that's where I kind of woke up and was like, I need to take this really seriously. Whereas before I was kind of just sort of writing for fun. And when you're writing a novel, there's usually multiple 10,000 word stretches where you're just pulling teeth, or at least that's how I work. That's what taught me how to grind through the hard points and actually just finish things, which is probably the biggest hurdle for most writers, honestly. Very few people care about your writing. If you stop doing it, no one would really notice. So it's really easy to just kind of give up once it gets boring, but you're never going to finish anything if you do that. You have to get this steel to finish things. And that's what I learned from that lady.
I was really thinking about it. I was like, something that's been on my mind, as I'm sure has been on the mind of like a lot of people in the comics community, like somebody who definitely deserves their flowers, and has been like a topic of conversation because it was unfortunate, but sure, we're all aware that Akira Toriyama has passed. It was a shock, just like one of those creators that is truly inspiring, and I think means a lot to a lot of people my age, like the Toonami generation. Kind of really thinking about like how he's inspired me. Like I don't draw anything like how like Akira Toriyama draws. Like, it's so self-evident that that's his artwork, but there was like an attitude that he had, and something that I loved, having been in that Toonami generation, where, if I'm remembering correctly, they play Dragon Ball Z first, and then they played like Dragon Ball, and they have like a very different voice from each other, because like one's clearly trying to hone in on like his earlier like gag manga roots, while Dragon Ball Z is still hilarious. Like, you know, Dragon Ball is still a different animal. And then even before that, you know, I was lucky enough that my brother, also being a fan, when we were younger, he bought every edition of like Dr. Slump. And there I really loved Dr. Slump. And you can really like get to know him a lot better because he has these like little comics in between some of the chapters where he talks about like making that chapter, or even just like what happened that day and living with his parents. And that was actually like one of the first little bits of insight to me of like, what is it like to be a comic artist? Like, what is it like to actually making this kind of stuff, especially when the, you know, market between Japan and America is so different. It's just like, here's what a Japanese mangaka is doing, and it's like Akira Toriyama, and it's like really early. He's just like drawing in his bedroom while his dad nags him, and I'm like, this is kind of mind-blowing to me, like as like a young teen who, you know, at the time still wanted to be like a comic artist. I wanted to be a comic artist since forever. Having that like bit of humanity behind the man, the myth, the legend. There's even just like a little thing that he wrote like at the end of Dragon Ball Z where he encourages like everybody to, you know, who's read this book to approach life with the same energy as Goku. And I'm like, there's something so pure about that. And I would really just like to have that moment where I get to talk about how that openness and that kind of enthusiasm really is very inspiring. And I think I take a little bit of that, you know, when days are hard and it's just like it sucks to draw. It's just like, well, you know, what if I did approach this with the same energy as Goku? Like, what if I was able to refresh myself? And that sometimes is like a much better headspace to move into. Just like a fantastically inspiring person that I've never met, but because of how great he was, you know, at leaving these little breadcrumbs of what it was like to be making this kind of stuff, like feels like you get to know him just a little bit.
From a professional perspective, you are both successful in your various careers, from a lawyer and now comic creator and writer to an artist. So professionally, you're successful in these regards. Do you consider yourselves personally successful?
I remember being asked this question before. I think my answer was that I wasn't yet, just because I haven't gotten to draw everything that like I have wanted. I at this point would have to still say, I don't think that interview was even a year old at this point. And I've been drawing like crazy ever since then. And drawing, of course, things I never thought. Every time it's like you're drawing something you never thought you'd ever have to do that before. Like right now I'm drawing this like enormous arena with 3 massive bird statues, and I'm doing it over and over again. I've had to learn like wrist stretches and exercises because my hand is like cramping up. Nope, still haven't drawn everything. So I was like, not successful yet. It'd be nice, you know, to get something bought up, make a ton of money, live on that pile like a dragon. But until I feel like I've drawn everything that I need to say, I think that answer will continue to be a not yet.
I haven't gotten a comic published yet, so I don't think I can claim success in that field quite yet. But in general, I mean, I don't know that other people might say that I'm not actually that successful, but I'm definitely living a life that I really love. I have a great family. I'm not broke. Yeah, so I guess mostly yes.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
The second novel I got published sold, I think I got $100 off that. And the reviews were pretty abysmal because it was a video game book, right? And so I wrote a satirical take on video game addiction. The audience wanted a book about video games, right? Like I got 2 stars because I didn't have spreadsheets with stats in it, which is just mind-boggling to me. But that's where I learned the lesson of don't write for audiences that you don't really want to write for, right? Because this is what's going to happen. They don't want you. You don't really want them. I've had an enormous amount of failure as a writer. So you basically just pick up and keep going till you fucking get it. And that's it. You just keep going. Start the next one.
The saying is what? Like get knocked down 2 times, stand up 3. There are a lot of things that you can do that are within your power to increase your odds of success, but like there's no way you're not going to like fail in big ways at times, sometimes within your range of control, sometimes outside of your range of control. I'm definitely an overthinker in a lot of ways, but when it comes to problem solving, my solution is always to just brute force it. Like I don't like to overthink in that regard. It's just like a minor failure would be just like sending somebody like a portfolio, like looking for work, and you just like never hear back. It's just like you can't let that get you down. You can ask yourself, okay, what could I fix about my portfolio? Was it just like maybe not what they were looking for? But regardless, you have to just be completely determined to keep just like firing them out. And a lot of times, like, don't take it personally. Think about yourself professionally, keep firing it off. Like, that's what it takes to keep working like in the industry. Have a level of fortitude. It's to embrace like that failure. Like, just don't get discouraged.
The younger generation's looking at your works and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as a comic writer or as an artist. Maybe you're inspiring them down that creative path. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what everyone talks about Gen Z now, and then there's Gen Alpha now, which are like the kids of millennials. So, like people in my age group. And all I really know about Gen Alpha is like skibbity toilet. So, I'm like, oh, what are they going to do? I mean, I may be in that range. Actually, it's kind of funny. When I learned what skibbity toilet was, I was like, what is this? And then I learned it's Gary's Mod, which is something that millennials were enjoying. And then, like, I think the person who makes that is a Zoomer. And now Gen Alpha watches all of that. It's funny how these things kind of travel down. But thinking about like these sort of generational ties, I think that things are changing between how different generations like treat each other. Maybe it was a YouTube video, maybe it was a podcast, but they were talking about how one of the tropes of comedy is like, ooh, generational resentment towards each other. Every generation that comes first for the one beneath it is going to be like, these guys, they're not tough. They're making all kinds of dumb decisions. I think things have like shaken up a little bit. Gen X has a generally good relationship with millennials. I think millennials are very concerned about like Zoomers. I think like Zoomers and millennials are very concerned about similar things. And so when it comes to now like that very fresh generation, I think that a growing sense of like generational compassion is going to be like what fuels these certain lessons. It's going to be less tough love and more kind of compassionate and direct. We have YouTube, like you can get all kinds of, not even just drawing lessons, but you can get all kinds of emotional support. I see this all the time with here's how to handle your mental health if you're a beginning artist or if you're a new beginning like creative. I think there's going to be more outreach. Yeah, I see like millennial channels like do that for Zoomers. And I see Zoomers, who are being like, hey, you're starting like your first comic. I hope what Gen Z then passes down to Gen Alpha is like a sense of compassion and awareness. So I hope that there's like more discussions about like what fandoms like people are part of, like video games, books, comics. There's been so much good discussion since the early 2000s thanks to the internet. I hope that they pass down appreciation and more like lightheartedness toward just like what they're passionate about without like a kind of judgment.
I guess what I would hope is that the takeaway, that the influence I would have on other people is just going full bore, right? Passionate, enthusiastic, pour yourself out onto the page. That will probably take you in some pretty good places. I mean, it covers a wide range of things, right? Because I mean, there's so many different people, so many mentalities, but just it seems like pouring yourself out on the page, whether it's artistically or with words, is what works for me. I think one of the things people do is one of the reasons they get into the vagueness and irrelevancy that I complained about earlier as a symptom of bad writing is that they're just afraid, right, to really let it hang out there because we're afraid of being perceived, right? Because what if they think I'm stupid, or what if they think I'm lame or whatever? Fuck that. Go for it. People will respect that much more than hiding in the shadows trying to like stay, not get made fun of. So go get made fun of. Put yourself in a position to get made fun of.
If your life was a comic book or TV series or film, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
Exquisite tedium, or yeah. I've had a, well, it's, you don't need to get into that. My childhood was one of exquisite boredom. Exquisite boredom, there you go. Exquisite boredom, that's the title. And I guess the soundtrack, I mean, just given my age, it would almost have to be, I don't know, the Smashing Pumpkins, I guess, would be where I'd go with it. Before a door, like we're talking Siamese Dream, Melancholy, that kind of stuff.
Good stuff.
Some of their later stuff I enjoyed, but yeah, that Machina of the Gods doesn't have a lot to offer.
Maybe the title's like, I feel like I had something back there, because that it seems to be a refrain I've been having lately. I think the genre would definitely be some sort of like slacker comedy, something like kind of grungy. I don't know. I feel trapped in the 90s. And speaking of like trapped in the 90s, like that being said, I drive like a 1996 Toyota Corolla, and I like play all my music out of a cassette tape. Like I wear a jean jacket. My wife works at Guitar Center, so like we run in these like musician crowds, and everyone's like kind of like a punk or like some kind of crusty musician. I would say Weezer would absolutely, I mean, like they're my favorite band. Actually, this year, tying it in, they're doing Nothing But the Blue album for their tour, and they're going to be doing this with Dinosaur Jr. Jay Mascis is the singer, and they have a song called like The Wagon. So you get all the musicians, and they're like, that would be my movie. But like Weezer, Dinosaur Jr., I thought I had something back there. That's the movie.
Well, I do hate to say it, Justin and Rachel, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. Before I let you both go, where can we find you? How can we support you? And of course, where is this amazing campaign?
The campaign is going to be up on Zoop. If you've enjoyed the interview and getting to know us a little bit, absolutely go on to Zoop, look up SWAT, and please sign up for when the campaign launches. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Red Tie Bear.
Zoop.gg is the website, it's not .com. On Threads, I am Justin Coke 6161, and then on Blue Sky, I hate social media. It's obligatory. It's justincoke.bsky.social. And that's pretty much, I'm not on Twitter because fuck Elon.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO. Website's going through a complete rebuild. Go to our YouTube channel. That's always updated, youtube.com/TGTmedia. The podcast is back, and find that at twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.